Hello, everybody. Lots of happy voices out there in the audience. I'd like to thank each and every one of you again for, excuse me, Jerry, for coming to our September forum. We're doing a topic this month that I think is of real, genuine interest to a lot of people, not only here in Oregon City, but throughout the entire region, and that's urban renewal. And as you know, we do have a ballot measure that the voters will be making a decision on here in November as to whether to maintain urban renewal as something in the toolbox here for the city in attracting businesses. We're very honored to have a speaker in Elaine Howard here today who has over 30 years of experience in working in setting up urban renewal districts or in amending existing plans. She's worked in Lake Oswego, Tigard, Gladstone, just finished up in Milwaukee. She's working over in Astoria, Lebanon, Hood River. You name it, I think she's been there. But one of them that I think she's probably most excited about is Wilsonville. And we're honored to have Nancy Krushauer come back from Wilsonville. She was here in Public Works for many, many years, and we appreciate your service that you did for the city. And I think we just, you know, it's a topic that a lot of people are confused about, and today we're just hoping to create a little more clarity on what urban renewal is all about, and where it's been implemented, and where it's succeeded, and where there's been challenges. With that being said, I'm going to get out of the way and turn it over to Elaine, because she's got lots to share with you.
What I'm covering is urban renewal and how it works, what it is, what some of the constraints are, and then talking about where urban renewal has been successful in other of your neighboring communities. I first want to show you a video that was put together by the Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies. I'm a member of that group. And it just talks about urban renewal in general, so it gives a little bit of an overview, and then I'll go into a PowerPoint. Nancy is gracious enough to be here, and a big part of my talk talks about Wilsonville, and so when we get to that part, we can be real interactive if you have questions, and Nancy can talk a little bit more about the success Wilsonville's had with urban renewal.
When you ask people about urban renewal, they have certain perceptions about what that means. But what really urban renewal is to most places, it's a tool that allows policymakers to invest in projects that are important to their communities. The whole concept of urban renewal is that by investing limited public resources to lure a business owner, a property owner, an employer to invest in a place that they otherwise wouldn't, you're creating something that's larger than just those resources are in and of themselves.
So many of the laws that were set up for urban renewal at the very beginning were really focused around huge cities like Portland. Now that the smaller entities started getting involved, we have completely different needs. Right now we're literally breaking ground to begin the final mini phase of the West Valley View project, which will be creating a public plaza and on-street parking, which opens up an entire 15-acre parcel to the historic core of the downtown.
I think we're in a great spot right now to see new businesses come in. That West Valley View area will be spectacular in the next 20 years.
The urban renewal investment thus far has been about $1.5 million. And approximately $77 million of investment between the public sector and the private sector. So you can see the leverage that's occurred through some key early investments and how that incents and invites private sector investment to our waterfront.
Good urban renewal programs are best done locally. This urban renewal area has catalyzed literally hundreds and hundreds of jobs.
Solstice is a wood-fire cafe. We're located at the Hood River waterfront. We received money from the local economic development center, and we've gone from 40 staff in our old location to 81 staff currently. And these businesses down here give us that steady lunch clientele.
Right now we're in the lobby of the historic John Jacob Astor Hotel, which is in downtown Astoria. This lobby has been closed since 1968, and that is why it's in the condition you see it. I was born in Astoria. When living in a nearby town, though, I came to Astoria, I found a property for sale, and developed the Commodore Hotel. Since then, we've developed a total of 4 properties along 14th Street. It's really been the advancement of each of these properties has been the catalyst for yet another property. Until now, it seems like the whole downtown is thriving.
Urban renewal was a key component of saving the Liberty Theater. In the early 90s, the community came together, wanted to make sure that it was saved and not torn down, because so many communities have lost treasures like these. Downtown Astoria was pretty run down. Having the Liberty Theater be something that could trigger a renaissance in downtown was the thought. So $1 million came in from the city, and we've leveraged that now into $9 million worth of restoration work.
Currently, we are in the showroom of the Lovell Building, and the Lovell Building was built as a state-of-the-art auto dealership in 1921. We run 3 different restaurants and 2 breweries. When we opened in 2007, this building and the building, the Fort George building, were empty, and this was a dead end of town. Our experience with urban renewal funds were, after we bought the 2 buildings, they were in a lot of disrepair. So we applied for the urban renewal funds to paint the building. And about the time we applied for those loans, we probably had 35 employees, and today we have about 108 employees. 8 years ago, nothing was down here, and now it's kind of become the core of the city in a sense.
When you ask people if they think that their cities, the public sector, should play a role in creating healthy neighborhoods, should promote job growth, should ensure that cities and towns are livable places, urban renewal is another tool in their toolbox to invest in their communities.
So I think a lot of you know what urban renewal is, but I'll kind of start from the beginning in case you don't. Urban renewal is a program that was set up on the federal level to address blighted conditions in use when it was originally started in major cities. And it was started to work with housing authorities and to clear land and to build housing authority units. As it has progressed, it was allowed to be used on the state level, and then in Oregon and other communities, other states, allowed to be used on the local level also. So it's used throughout Oregon. I have a map that shows where all in Oregon it's used, but basically it provides a funding mechanism to allow cities to concentrate efforts within a certain area within their city. So to do programs, projects within a specified area of the city. It does that by using increases in property taxes within that area, so the increase of value, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, to fund those projects within the area. The amount of spending in urban renewal areas is controlled by something called maximum indebtedness. Maximum indebtedness is the total amount of money that you may spend in an urban renewal area on your administration, your projects, and your programs. Maximum indebtedness does not include interest paid on debt. So if your urban renewal area takes out a long-term bond or goes to a bank and has interest on that debt, that's not included as part of that maximum indebtedness. It used to be that urban renewal plans a long time ago had durations. So they said that they may only last X amount of years. After Measure 50 was passed, the legislature went in and reworked part of the urban renewal statute and changed that provision so that maximum indebtedness is the controlling feature of an urban renewal area. Some urban renewal areas still have durations, and even some urban renewal areas that are new urban renewal areas will put durations in their urban renewal plans because the city council has made a political or policy decision that they only want their area to go a certain time frame. So it may be in some plans. It's not a statutory requirement to be in an urban renewal plan. This shows, and this is about a year old, so it doesn't show all urban renewal areas, but it shows in the state of Oregon where urban renewal is used. And you can see the little cutout in the middle that looks at Clackamas County, so it's used throughout Clackamas County. and really throughout the state in most of the major cities. So if you look up and down the coast, you can see that most of the coastal cities use it. Klamath Falls has it, down in Southern Oregon, Jacksonville, Medford, Phoenix, Talent. Grants Pass just adopted an urban renewal area. And then it's also used out along the river, Hood River, the Dalles, Hermiston, Pendleton, Milton, Freewater. So it's used throughout the state of Oregon. The main areas in Clackamas County that have urban renewal can be Estacada, Gladstone, Lake Oswego, Molalla, Oregon City, Sandy, Wilsonville, and Clackamas County itself has experience using urban renewal. So what is Blight? Blight is what you have to be able to qualify as an urban renewal area. And Blight is defined in the statute. ORS 457 is the controlling statute for urban renewal, and a lot of urban renewal plans and documents strictly follow that statute. And what you may or may not do in an urban renewal area is defined in that statute. So unlike other things that cities do, urban renewal has a really prescribed set of rules about what may happen and may not happen in an urban renewal area. Blight typically covers underdevelopment or underutilization of property. It also covers poor conditions of buildings and inadequacy of infrastructure. So if you don't have adequate streets or the utilities to serve potential development areas, that can classify as a blighted area. The way the statute is written, you only need to have one instance of blight in your urban renewal area. Not every parcel in an urban renewal area has to qualify as blighted. Only kind of the area as a whole has to have blighting conditions within the area. Most urban renewal areas that I work on, and I've worked on about 60% of them in the state, so I have a really good knowledge of what's going on in other communities and what they do. These three conditions are the top conditions of if you're looking at what blight is in those urban renewal areas. There are state limitations on how much urban renewal you may have within your city. So if you have a population of under 50,000 like Oregon City does, you can have up to 25% of your total assessed value in urban renewal and up to 25% of your total acreage in urban renewal. If you're over 50,000, the city of Tiger just went over 50,000, you may have 15% of your total assessed value in urban renewal and 15% of your total acreage. There are also existing limitations on your plans. So if you have an original existing urban renewal plan and you want to expand it, you may only add 20% of what your original acreage was in your urban renewal area. And that's so that an urban renewal area doesn't end up just kind of moving all over the city, that there are limitations to it. And your maximum indebtedness, again, that total amount of money you may spend, may only be increased by 20% of the original maximum indebtedness increased annually by inflation, unless you get 75% of the taxing districts to agree to an expansion of more than that. So there are prescribed limitations within the statute about urban renewal and limitations to help to confine it. How does urban renewal financing work? To establish an urban renewal area, you establish a boundary for that urban renewal area. At the time that that urban renewal area is established, the county assessor will set up what's called a frozen base assessed value of that urban renewal area. And that's the total assessed value of the area at the time it was established. And the taxing jurisdictions all continue taking their percentage of taxes off of that frozen base. As values within that urban renewal area increase, you can see this, the taxes off of that increment go to the urban renewal agency. So what happens is all of the taxing districts get to keep their taxes off of that part, but as the district grows, the taxing districts don't get taxes off of that. So that's the impact of urban renewal. Everybody always says, well, urban renewal sounds so great, what's the impact? The impact is to the taxing districts who may have gotten taxes off of that increased value. They would have gotten it if it were happening without urban renewal. There's always a question of what value happens within an urban renewal area that wouldn't have happened unless urban renewal was put into place. And when we talk about Wilsonville, we can say specifically about an area where we know nothing would happen unless urban renewal was there to cause the infrastructure to occur. At the end of urban renewal, what the goal is, financial goal is that all those taxing districts will receive more tax revenue off of that urban renewal area than they would have if urban renewal didn't exist. So if you're doing urban renewal and you're only getting that 3% growth that's allowed by our Constitution, and there's no increased value there, your urban renewal area probably hasn't given you what you've wanted to do, which is to increase the vitality of the area and hopefully give back to those taxing districts increased dollars at the end that they wouldn't have had if urban renewal didn't take those monies throughout the lifetime of the urban renewal area. Since there isn't a duration to urban renewal plans, it's always a tricky thing when you're writing a new urban renewal plan to figure out what that duration might be. So you work with a community and you look at the projects that they want to do, you look at the amount of costs that those projects would incur, and then you look at what time frame, over what time frame you think that your area will be able to accumulate that amount of money to pay for those projects. It's not an exact science. We can make estimates based on growth that happens within that area and historical growth, knowing that you should have more growth if you have urban renewal assisting in that growth. The plans that I work on are typically between a 25 and a 35-year time frame. So we just completed one in Milwaukee. We based that on a 29-year time frame. And obviously, if growth happens more quickly, then that maximum indebtedness will be reached more quickly. If we go into another huge recession that lasts for a long time, then that growth may take a little longer to occur. Urban renewal areas may be closed out earlier if they reach their maximum indebtedness earlier, and that unfortunately doesn't happen often, but it has happened before. The Redmond Industrial Airport is a really good example. They went in, they put the infrastructure in, got a lot of great development, took a look at the area, figured the private sector was doing well and that urban renewal didn't need to exist there anymore, and closed out that urban renewal area. The Wilsonville TIF zones were set up specifically on a shorter time period, and we'll talk about those a little further down, where they only operated for a shorter time period than that 25 to 35-year time frame. And again, the goal of urban renewal, one of the economic goals, is everybody gets more taxes at the end of an urban renewal area. This part is really confusing, and I try to explain it just so that people can get an idea of it in their mind. So when you all get your property tax bills, there's a line item on your property tax bills that says urban renewal. And there's a dollar number associated with it if you live in a city that has urban renewal. So Oregon City on their property tax bill will have at the bottom urban renewal, and it will have a dollar amount. And a lot of times cities will get phone calls and people will say, well, I thought you told me urban renewal doesn't increase my taxes, or I don't live in that urban renewal area, so why are my taxes going up? And this is the answer to how urban renewal works financially and why it's on your property tax bills. So if you look at a property value of $100,000, and we just use that so it's easy for you to multiply if it's $200,000 or $300,000, and you look at what the assessor has to do each year to calculate how much money goes to urban renewal. So if that property value increased by just that 3% that's allowed by our Constitution, that 3% raises that property tax value to $103,000, and you can see that on that top line up there. And then if you look at the amount of property taxes that are paid, and this is for Oregon City, the amount of property taxes paid off of that is $1,624.80, and that doesn't include bonds or local option levies. That's just the permanent rate levies. So the assessor will look at that, and let's say this is the frozen value, that $100,000. So the assessor says, I have $3,000 worth of increased value within that area, and that's given me $47.32 that has to go to the urban renewal area. So if you have urban renewal and this property increased by that much over the time frame of the year the assessor's looking at, the assessor will say, I have to put $47.32 into that urban renewal fund. You can look at the bottom line there, and it doesn't change the amount of taxes you would pay with urban renewal or the amount of taxes you would pay without urban renewal. If your urban renewal area goes away, you still pay that same amount of taxes. The difference is there's a portion of it that's divided out for urban renewal. What that means to the taxing districts is they don't get that increased value. So that's what we talked about on that frozen base. So where does that $47.32 come from? It comes from all of those other taxing districts. The caveat to that is for the schools, the school district and the education service district are funded on a per pupil basis by the state school fund. So there's an impact on the state school fund because urban renewal dollars don't go into the state school fund. But those schools are funded on a per pupil basis. So every school in Oregon gets the same amount of money per pupil. So urban renewal in Portland or Astoria or Medford all has an impact on that state school fund, but it doesn't have a direct impact on your schools. The question is, if all of that urban renewal money went to the state school fund, would there be more on a per pupil basis? I don't have the answer to that, and I think no one except the legislature has an answer to that because they establish those per pupil funding targets every year. So that's a political question, and all we can deal with is we know this is how it works. We know where the impacts are, and we know how they work, and what might happen with or without urban renewal is not something that we know until the legislature makes some decision on that. So within an urban renewal area, the assessor does this to every single property within the area and calculates how much value there is over the frozen base, and then says, okay, for urban renewal this year, I have to put in $500,000. And the assessor then takes that $500,000 target and splits it over every property tax bill in the city. So not just within the urban renewal area. So this just shows how the assessor figures out how much money, in your case it's a he has to raise. And then once they figure out how much money they have to raise, they split that to every single property tax bill. That's a result of our whole Measure 50 decision about property tax rates and the requirement that you can only pay $10 per general government and $5 per schools and the limitations there. Shiloh Inn sued the City of Portland and the Portland Development Commission, saying that they thought urban renewal had to be calculated in that general government rate. That was an impact from Measure 50. The court system agreed with them, and therefore every property tax bill in a city that has urban renewal shows urban renewal on it. There are a number of different time frames on which urban renewal areas take what in terms of bonds and local option levies. The Oregon City urban renewal area does take division of taxes from some bonds that are in effect. And that's because it's a little bit older urban renewal area. New urban renewal areas don't take any money from local option levies or general obligation bonds. This is something that the Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies has gone to the legislature and tried to do fixes on this. And so that's why any new urban renewal areas don't take money from bonds, but your Oregon City one actually does take a division of tax from your general obligation bonds. And we went through this, so that just explains on each property tax bill, you're paying your portion out of the existing taxes you would pay, so it doesn't go up, of what that total amount that has to be raised for urban renewal is. So the impacts on taxing jurisdictions is a big issue because that's where your money comes from, and everybody who runs an urban renewal agency should always remember that that money is money that's intended to do specific things in your community, and that you have this kind of ethical responsibility to the taxing districts to spend that money well and to all of your voters because it is money that came from their pockets. Communication with your taxing districts is key, so hopefully you work with them and talk to them and let them know what you're doing and get input from them on how you're running your urban renewal area, because they do forego taxes on the growth in the urban renewal area. And again, there's that question of but for urban renewal, and what that concept is if you have a potential urban renewal area, and we'll talk about this one in Coffee Creek in Wilsonville, which is an industrial area that has been sitting fallow for years and is not being developed because there aren't roads to service the area, there aren't utilities to service the area, and that area is not going to grow. So if urban renewal is able to put that infrastructure in and the area grows, the taxes that come off of that probably wouldn't have happened if urban renewal wasn't there to make that investment happen within the urban renewal area. I have information here about some of the Wilsonville urban renewal areas, some of the Lake Oswego ones, and a little bit about the new Milwaukee urban renewal area. So in Wilsonville, they have decided that urban renewal is a key economic development tool for the city of Wilsonville. When we talked about that 25% limitation on total acreage, Wilsonville has, in urban renewal, or will have 24-point-something% of their acreage in urban renewal. And that's a commitment by their city council that urban renewal is a tool that they should take advantage of, and it has worked well for them. They have 2 existing urban renewal areas, and Nancy can come up and, do you want to talk about the 2 existing areas a little bit?
Sure, okay. Do I need a mic?
Yes. Yep.
Hello? Can you all hear me back there? Yes. Okay, so they're, the oldest urban renewal plan in Wilsonville is the year 2000 urban renewal area. It was actually established in 1992. And that was, that's in the town center area. And that was built to promote infrastructure and encourage development, particularly on the south side of Wilsonville Road. And then there were several really very nice parks that are used not only used amazingly a lot by all the Wilsonville community, but also visitors come to Wilsonville to visit our parks as well. Then on the west side, we have an urban renewal area that was created to encourage the development of the Villebois Urban Village, which is a highly successful residential neighborhood. It's about 60–70% built out now. And the whole idea of that was to build the roads to connect Villebois with the downtown Wilsonville, or the historic downtown, which is not nearly as historic as this downtown, by the way. Anyway, there were, primarily for Villebois, there's been a network of streets built out, and in addition to that, there's been some encouragement for development over in the Fred Meyer shopping center area. And as you know, Wilsonville is a very young city. It's probably the youngest city in the state of Oregon now, since Damascus is no longer. And we still are lacking in terms of our transportation network. So it was really important to create a good backbone of transportation projects to get people around. The other thing that it was used for was a fair, I think about $12 million for the I-5 Wilsonville Road interchange.
So this just shows that percent of total acreage that we talked about. So they're working on a Coffee Creek urban renewal area right now, and I'll pull up that slide in a minute, you can talk about it. And if that's adopted, they would be at 24.57%. If you look at the total assessed value, it's lower, it's 7.31%, so they don't have as much assessed value within those areas. In the frozen base, so that's talking about the frozen base, but they do have close to their maximum on the acreage. So this slide just shows in the year 2000 area that Nancy talked about, which is the oldest, that the frozen base was 44 million, and the total current assessed value of that area is 425 million. And so they've had a huge increase in assessed value within that area. And that's only of the area that's left. So you can look at this and say, my goodness, that area, that's all blue and it's all kind of mismatchy. It used to be all one contiguous area. Over the years, the city of Wilsonville has taken property out of that area, put it back on the property tax rolls because they didn't need that assessed value to be able to continue doing the projects within the area. So they've said, we're really successful, we still have projects to do, so let's give some of that assessed value back to the taxing jurisdiction. So that's worked really well. The other thing the city's done on that area is limited the total amount of tax increment that they take each year to $4 million a year. And any value above that, they return to all of the taxing jurisdictions. And they're able to do that because the area has been really successful. And you may say, well, why don't they just close down the area, get in all the money and close it down? They've been working with the West Linn-Wilsonville School District, and there are compression issues in Wilsonville. And if they, during the recession and up until we're hoping this year that will get solved, if they close down that area, it would have a huge negative impact on the school district because of those compression issues and that whole $10 per general government, $5 for school issue, and compression is something that would take us a whole nother 90 minutes to explain if I try to explain that. But that's one of the reasons that they haven't just closed down that area, is because they're trying to help the school district not have a loss in their funding. The West Side Urban Renewal area, the frozen base was almost $15 million. The total current assessed value of that is $376 million. So again, they've had incredible increase in assessed value in that urban renewal area.
I might add too that this Villebois residential area was the site of the former state damaged hospital, the mental health facility. And Villebois was intentionally designed to have a diverse housing types, that you could be multiple levels of income, and there's multifamily, single family. There's also facilities that are expressly provided for people with disabilities.
And this is the Coffee Creek Urban Renewal area, and you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. This is the one that we're working on getting adopted, and there are about 200 acres-ish.
240 or something, yeah.
It's smaller than the other two urban renewal districts were, and this has been an area that was brought into the urban growth boundary in like 1996. I'm not sure the exact date, but in the 90s. And it sat and got its concept planning done, and then it got some economic feasibility done. And in 2003, we had this great plan, but there was still no interest at all in developing in this area because it's severed from utilities and roadway infrastructure for development to come in and develop. So because it's on the edge of the city, because there's limited infrastructure, the developers really do not have the means to put together a package where they will be profitable if they develop this industrial land. Of course, at this point, the metro area is looking for more jobs, more employment, and we've gotten more interest from the developers, but again, they don't quite have the means to get it built. So we've been working on, we've got a set of projects that are primarily sewer, water, and roadway projects. There it is. Do you want to talk about some of this too? I don't want to take over the whole thing.
I don't think we need to go through those, but I think
we carefully selected projects that once we can assist, we can have public-private partnerships. We can build these together. We did not set our maximum indebtedness at something that we would fund all the projects. This is intended to be a partnership with the private sector. And yet, once we get this kicked off, once we start getting development out there, once it's complete, we'll be very successful in increasing the tax base and also providing jobs.
So one interesting thing about Wilsonville, and this kind of ties us back to your upcoming vote, Wilsonville has always, it's a political decision. It's not required by their charter. They go out for an advisory vote on their urban renewal areas. So when they decided they wanted to do the Coffee Creek Urban Renewal Area, they, last November, put it on the ballot and asked for the citizens to tell them yes or no, should we form an urban renewal area in Coffee Creek. They did the same thing on the TIF zones, and the TIF zones was a concept. During the recession, Wilsonville had a lot of vacant industrial space. that wasn't being used, and they didn't qualify for enterprise zones, which is something that lower income areas qualify for. So they set up their own little single building urban renewal areas that act like an enterprise zone. So it was to help try to attract businesses to come in and use those large industrial spaces. So far, they were set up in concept, and then when a developer came in, they would actually start to be implemented. So far, none of them have been implemented. The recession kind of went away. Some of those buildings are now occupied by other businesses. But it was a great concept. It was an innovative concept, and they also went out for a vote on that to their citizens to say, should we try this? Should we see if this is something that will work in our community?
Right. And before that, we also created an economic development plan for the city, and then from that we moved on to an urban renewal, citywide urban renewal strategic plan, and we had active participation of citizens task forces as we did that.
Yeah,
and helped it get very transparent, very well understood, and very well supported throughout the city.
Yeah, I think there were about 20 people on the task force, and it included citizens, people from the business community, and the taxing districts. What they did, however, was looked at total funding sources in that area and said that their SDC fund could allocate some money out of the SDC fund towards the transportation improvements within that area.
So you're looking at leveraging in this case, where some SDCs will be used, but we also have to keep in mind we've got needs throughout the city with those system development charges.
I think urban renewal is most successful when a community's engaged. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be by a vote. So I think some community, Tigard, I'm working with Tigard right now on 2 plans, and both of those will have to go to a vote. But I've worked in a lot of other communities where they have successful participation, they have advisory committees. We had Minville. I finished a plan for them 2 years ago. We had an open house where over 200 people came to the open house. So their community, just as a community, is really encouraged and excited about things that happen in the community. And there really was no opposition to that urban renewal plan because all of our meetings were open, a lot of people came, so I think it really depends on the community and the politics of the community. And since you have the vote and they decided to do the vote, maybe you should
speak to that. And these were advisory votes. They weren't voting up or down. The city council still had the authority to do that, but it was the citizens supporting moving forward with an urban renewal district. I think my experience is oftentimes the public isn't well enough informed and don't understand all the details about urban renewal. And so what's most important to us is to have very educated, well-informed voters so that they know what it really means.
In Wilsonville, they have a monthly newsletter that goes out to all of their citizens, and they do a really nice job of covering what they're doing, what their urban renewal has done, what their other city projects are. So it helps to give you that informed voter group so that they know really what the issues are and what they're voting on.
And I would also add that what's important is to keep the tool in the toolbox. It could be that there are 1 or 2 urban renewal areas that wouldn't be supported by the city of Wilsonville. And that's okay, but we don't want to just get rid of the tool all the way completely, because then those that are really important for economic development in the community wouldn't even have a chance. And I might add, many of the projects are not just like in the West Side area. Those are benefiting the entire community. They're not just to help developers in Villebois. I mean, there's new connections that enable people to get off of Wilsonville Road, and so it's really it's not just a totally focused benefit area.
That's a really good question. The question was how do you address the interstate, the highway system, and how do you get funding for that? And I wish I knew an answer to that. Urban renewal hasn't been used for interstate development. That's a federal program, right? Gary?
I was going to say, it has been used, though, pretty extensively in Clackamas County. The urban renewal districts that we have built Sunnybrook, Sunnyside,
right, true.
72nd. So for local roads, urban renewal can
true.
be used.
And it can provide a local match. A lot of the federal funding these days, the communities need to come up with a significant local match to compete. And urban renewal, a local urban renewal funding could be used for that local match.
So we're going to move to Lake Oswego, so just across the, and they have 2 urban renewal areas. They have the Lake Grove Village Center urban renewal area, and there is 1 project in that, and that's redoing Boones Ferry Road. And that was, I worked on that project. It was very interesting because the city council was not really pro-urban renewal, and I think they felt like if they approved the urban renewal plan, it was also dependent on a vote of the citizens to fund a bond. And they thought, oh, the citizens aren't going to vote for that bond, so we won't have to do this urban renewal area. But guess what? Overwhelmingly, the bond measure went on. That was the component part of the urban renewal and was approved by the voters. And so the city council said, well, okay, if that's what our voters want us to do, then we will do this. So it's a fairly new urban renewal area, and the goal is to improve that Boones Ferry Road, which passes right directly through the area. There are other urban renewal areas, a little bit more like yours in Oregon City, where it's the downtown core. And that urban renewal area has been around for a long time, but it's done some pretty amazing things. This is the corner of First and A, before the urban renewal project that came in there. So I know a lot of you probably saw it when it looked like that. And this is what it looks like now. That's the Lakeview Village project that was put in a number of years ago in urban renewal, in that urban renewal area. There was a total investment of $34.8 million of funding in that urban renewal area. 6.8 million of that was from the Urban Renewal Agency, and the rest of that was private development. The urban renewal area funded mostly the parking garage that you don't see when you see the development. You see the nice retail on the bottom, the offices up on the top. It provides that great cornerstone to the community. And tucked around behind is the parking garage that services the entire downtown. So urban renewal paid for the development of the parking garage, and in their agreement with the developer actually manages and maintains that parking garage, so the city didn't have to worry about that ongoing maintenance and management of that parking facility. This is another project that they did, which is the Historic Theater in Lake Oswego. So it isn't like the Liberty Theater in Astoria, which is that fabulous, huge historic theater, but this still was a cornerstone to the community and a gathering place for the community. The city did a rehab loan on this facility. They put in $350,000 about to the theater improvements. They also improved the plaza area that was outside of the theater at about $450,000, and the owner of the theater put in about $1 million. So the plaza isn't directly related to the theater, but helped make that outdoor area really nice. This is just right on the edge of the bay there as you're headed up 43 on the west side. So these are the types of projects that Lake Oswego is invested in. They did the park in the downtown. This is their newest project, which is under construction right now. So this development will include 200 residential units and about 43,000 square feet of commercial space. It includes another parking garage that will have room for 430 cars. 135 of those spaces will be public parking. The redevelopment agency in Lake Oswego contributed about $5.2 million towards the project, and another about $800,000 towards construction permit reduction. So this also is a huge increase in assessed value in the urban renewal area. It'll bring those people to the urban renewal area that will help support the businesses. That's always really important in a downtown urban renewal area, is to make sure that you have that once the shops close at 5 or 6, that the whole downtown doesn't close up, that you can help keep your restaurants alive and other activity alive by having housing close to and in your urban renewal area. Lake Oswego's also done a lot of, and Oregon City's done some of this, the streetscape improvements, and it really helps the look of the community. It helps businesses decide they want to invest in the community. So these are just a couple of their streetscape projects. Milwaukee is a plan that I just finished working on, and it culminated years of work in Milwaukee on the Moving Forward Milwaukee planning process. So they spent a long time trying to figure out that list of projects, develop the list of projects. Let people know what you're going to do. Do they want you to do that or don't they want you to do that? In Milwaukee, we spent a lot of time, Nick Popenick and I worked on this project. He's from a different consulting firm. We spent time at the Milwaukee First Fridays. We spent time at the farmers market. We had a big advisory committee. The fire district was on that advisory committee. Other taxing districts were on it. I think we did a really good job of informing the community. We put articles in the Milwaukee newspaper once a month on the progress of the urban renewal area. It was adopted nearly a month ago. It'll go into effect soon in the next week or so if it gets past its 30-day expiration date. There was some talk of petitioners wanting to oppose it. The last I heard, those petitioners had decided not to go ahead and try to collect the signatures, so I don't know the exact status of that. The key things that they wanted to happen in that is the revitalization of their downtown, to improve their downtown streetscape, to bring new businesses into the downtown, and then a number of transportation improvements within the area, some parks improvements, making sure that that Riverside Park of theirs, the Riverfront Park, transitions to the downtown, developing vacant parcels that are in the urban renewal area. That area, so it's not just the downtown, but it also includes some of that central Milwaukee area that has a lot of underdeveloped and undeveloped parcels that can help supply or support that downtown area. This was set up, it's really interesting. We talked about duration of the plans when we did the feasibility work and tried to settle on what the maximum indebtedness might be. For some reason we Nick does the financial projections. He did a 29-year projection, right? And we presented that in one of the first advisory committee meetings about this 29-year projection. And we couldn't get anybody off that 29-year projection. We worked on the numbers, we worked on the projects, we talked about, well, maybe if we went another year or another 2 years, we might be able to do more projects. And once we had talked to them about 29 years, nobody wanted to go past 29 years. So it's really, the duration, people feel really strongly that urban renewal needs to end. And I totally agree with that. Urban renewal needs to get in, do its job well, and then if it need end or put property back on the tax rolls like they had promised to do, and then move on and do other projects maybe through another new urban renewal area. And yes, you have to start all over. You have to start building that base again and start building that money. But it's important to know what your projects are and to do them and to do them well. There's a lot of controversy about, does every project need to provide a return on investment? Does every project need to leverage money? And we talk about that a lot, and I've worked with all of these communities, and Astoria is a great example where the projects that we've done there, we did the Garden of Surging Waves. How many of you have been to Astoria? And have you seen the Garden of Surging Waves? It's awesome. And that was helped facilitate, urban renewal didn't pay for all that, but paid for part of it. The Liberty Theater, urban renewal helped pay for part of that. Directly, neither of those are going to get a return on investment. Neither of those increase property taxes. But if you talk to the developers who are on that video at the beginning and other developers about why have you decided to put your money into this community, they say because this community has decided to invest in itself. Because this community has put money into our facilities. This community is helping create the environment that people want to come to. So can you directly say the Astor Liberty Theater cause the Hotel Elliott to expand? Well, you can't, they aren't owned by the same person. You can't say directly, but when you talk to Hotel Elliott and ask them where is their patronage coming from, they can say the Liberty Theater. People come to watch that, and then they come spend the night at our hotel. So I know there's some question, and especially with taxing districts, about should you spend money on those projects, and And my answer is that's not a yes or no question, I don't think. I think you really have to look at your overall view of what you're trying to do and what you're trying, the environment you're trying to create in your community, and can that be done with other funds, and if not, can urban renewal help create that environment? I think it's really clear when, and I said this earlier, and I guess maybe that we should leave with this, is when communities invest in themselves, and when they decide that it's important to improve their community, private investment follows that. And you can see that in, you can go to each one of those communities that's on that map and just kind of take a look at what's happening in those communities and ask them. You know, Sherwood's a really good example. They did some public improvements, and they got a lot of private investment that came in because of those public improvements. So it's key when you talk to developers. They want to spend their money where it's going to have value and where other money's being spent to help support their investment.
Yeah, so a lot of information, a lot of exciting happenings because of urban renewal being a foundational resource that the cities and the communities can implement. And I think kind of a bottom line summary of what I've heard is you want to keep as many tools in your toolbox as possible. Why would you want to tie your hands behind your back when other jurisdictions and municipalities are going out there competing for the same businesses that are looking to relocate, and they can offer urban renewal and we can't? So it's something just to kind of keep in mind. I want to thank Elaine for an excellent presentation.